Hey everybody. So here I have a Whirlpool Cabrio dryer that I trash picked. It's an older model, maybe 2014, but it's actually newer than the one that I have now. So what I'm going to do is before I haul it into the house and hook it up, I'm actually going to test it out in the garage. To do that, I need to wire up an outlet that can take a dryer plug. And dryers, electric dryers, are kind of unique in that they need both 240 volts and 120 volts. So we're going to hook up going to wire up an outlet in the garage behind me to a little spare electrical panel that I have purely for dryer testing purposes. It's not going to be something that we use on a regular basis. I'm not adding a second dryer. This is just purely for testing purposes. So to do this, you're going to need a proper dryer outlet. I'll leave links to all this stuff in the description. Need an old work box, a faceplate, and some number 10 copper wire. Also going to need a circuit breaker, not pictured here, but I'll grab one before we get started. Found a breaker in my stash of breakers. This is a GE, I think it's a THQL, THQL double pole 30. I'm not sure if this breaker is going to fit in this panel. I'll show you why in a minute. This is one of those GE panels that takes a mixture of the thin and thick breakers, the THQP and the THQL series. So again, not sure if that breaker is going to fit. I might have to get one of those thin breakers, but let's start with taking the cover off. Now, full disclosure, we're going to be working inside an electrical panel here. This is not something that you're comfortable with doing. Certainly call an electrician, or at the very least, kill the power to your panel. I can easily kill the power to this panel by flipping a breaker next door, which I'm going to do once we get everything opened up. But again, be careful. If you don't know what you're doing, call somebody. You cannot be held liable if you hurt yourself or burn your house down. This is purely for, well, not really educational, but demonstration purposes. I'm pretty comfortable working around electricity, so this doesn't scare me. If it does scare you, don't be bashful. So here's our panel. Let me get you a little bit closer. All right, there we go. So quick anatomy lesson. So coming into the panel, I wired this panel probably, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago. Coming in, we have our one hot wire, our other hot wire, and combine these two make a 240 volt potential, but individually to either ground or neutral, they're 120 volts. So again, 120 volts together, 240. This is our neutral, and this is our ground. Now because this is a sub panel, you have to separate your neutral over here and your grounds over here. So notice this panel does not have a tie bar, which would normally go down here on GE panels. So that's probably more than you wanted to know. I don't think that breaker that I have is going to fit this. We'll try. I think it's got to be one of these skinnier style ones here, because I think these stabs down here are different. Let's try though. Oh yeah, I said I was going to shut the power off, right? Power should be off. Got a meter right here. Now you guys probably aren't going to be able to see that meter. Got it on AC volts. I guess it's not off. That's why we check. Flipped the breaker from my pool pump by mistake. Well, there's a sub panel out there. Try again. Now we should be dead. Yep, nobody's home. Before this meter was reading 240 volts. So our panel is dead, completely dead. We're safe to work. I tested and this breaker is going to fit, so I'm actually going to swap out this breaker too. I just don't like these thin breakers. So I'm going to use my square drive attachment here. Just going to unscrew this screw. Yank the black wire out. Take the breaker out. Again, nothing wrong with it, just I prefer these thicker style breakers. So I have a wider single pole 20, which is what came out of here. I have heard some stories about those thin breakers misbehaving. And rather than take a chance, since I have a ton of GE breakers in stock, just swap it out. No harm, no foul. Tighten this screw back in. There we go. Alright, so next step is to install one of these cable clamps. Sorry, I didn't have that in the original picture, but that's going to go about like there, and one of these little knockouts down there. So let's knock out, this is a 3/4 inch size, so let's knock out one of these knockouts with a screwdriver and a hammer. Maybe that one isn't a 3/4. Yeah, that's a 1/2 inch. That's why. No big deal. We should be able to just come back here. There we go. That's how they should pop out. Just wiggle it out with a set of pliers. Of course, there's a ton of insulation in this wall because it's a wall between interior and exterior space. Notice how this wall is my office closet. There we go. So that's going to be where our wire goes down. We're going to saw a hole right about here to put our box, hopefully. I know it's a lot of boxes in a small area on a piece of drywall. Hopefully it holds okay. Trace the outline of the box. Now we get our drywall saw and just cut that out. Ow. That's some thick stuff because it's 5/8. Man, that wall is not very strong. Not much I can do about it though. If I can't put the box on either side because I have framing on either side of the box, I have to be a much bigger job. Maybe I'll razor knife this out. Less trauma for the drywall. This is pretty slow going though. Now in some ways using A razor knife to do this cut is preferable because if you don't know what wires are in this wall and you start hacking away with a saw, you're going to cut something. And you're going to turn this into a much bigger job. So it's still possible to do that with a razor knife, but it's less likely. I feel like there's a bit of patch here before. That would be a good time to put a glove on because that's fiberglass insulation there. And once I put that cable clamp back in there, I'm never going to have an opportunity to tighten the screws on it. So I'm going to put it on try putting it on the cable like this, tightening the screws down, and then just trying to feed the whole cable and the clamp up through that hole. May not work out, but I'm going to give it a shot. Again, let's pull that tape. Get it together. Try to feed it out. Okay. Grab some insulation. All right, it's not going to work. It's just too tight of a spot. So I'm going to put one of these block-off plates in the open knockout that I opened. There we go. So I'm going to go after this knockout next, which is also 3/4. You may ask why I didn't do that to begin with. Well, I try to keep this area clear, and I thought it'd be nice and neat if I ran the wire up and around, but it's just not going to work. Not enough room. Same deal as before. All this work to test a stupid dryer, huh? There we go. Did I bring enough wire? Yeah, I think we'll be okay. All right, so let's cut this tape. Okay, so put a breaker. Breaker's going to have to go here. And you have to be careful to catch stabs from two different bus bars. You notice that they alternate. So like this comes from this bus bar, this one comes from that one. And you have to capture both of them to get your 240 volt circuit. Again, remember we were talking about this is the one 120 volt leg, this is the other 120 volt leg. So each one of these little things back here called bus bars, they're each 120 volts to ground. So I think we're going to put our breaker on this side here. Let's neatly tuck our wires out of the way first. So let's get our ground. Let's open up one of our ground screws. I like to keep the box nice and neat. So we'll cut it about there. Tighten our screw, make it good and tight. Now let's take our neutral wire, run it over to the neutral bus bar. that screw, that's fine. Like that. All right, now we just have our 2 hot wires. Those are going to get attached to our breaker. Let me get you guys a little closer and see what we've done so far. All right, so quick recap. We brought our wire up through this knockout here, ran our ground wire over to the ground bus bar, ran our neutral, the white wire, over to the neutral bus bar. And again, in some panels they may be the same thing. It may not look exactly like this, but on this particular panel they're separate. Here's our ground bus bar, you can see from the green wire. Here's our neutral bus bar down here, the white wire. So now we're ready to hook up our breaker. So same type of deal, we're going to fold the wires nice and neatly. I might need to move you guys out of the way again. Something like that. So it looks something like that. Let's get our breaker in, we'll size things. Alright, so I'm going to cut that wire about there and we'll strip it back. And we'll stick that under the screw. Like so. Same thing with the black wire. Snug that one down a little bit first. Make sure these screws are good and tight. Anytime I have a panel open, I like to check to make sure all of them are good and tight. So you don't want a loose connection anywhere. It's also a good opportunity to look for any signs of overheating up here. Sometimes you get loose connections here. You can burn up the wire and the lugs. Good and tight already. Okay. All right, now we gotta put our box in. The way these things work, they're pretty cool, right? So these are designed to just sit in the drywall, and when you tighten the screw up here and down here, these little wings kick out and latch the box onto the wall. Really cool design, if you ask me. So first, let's open up one of these knockouts in the back. Just got to do that with a pair of pliers. Let's see how good my cutout was. The box fits. That's the ultimate test, right? hole's fine, but the wire for this box is in the way. All right, after a bit of fighting, I think I got it. There you go. As you can see, the wall is pretty flexible here, just because there's not a lot of drywall left, but we'll do what we can with what we got. I find it sometimes helps to start these wings, because they can be a little tough to thread sometimes. Let's shorten this down a bit. We don't need this much wire. Cut it off about here. So you can see on the outlet you have gold screw, white screw, green screw. So the red and the black go to either gold screw, it doesn't matter. The white goes to the silver screw, and the ground, the bare wire, goes to green. Let's strip this cable. Just gonna run a blade over it very lightly. Pull the jacket off. Again, just to reiterate, I know this is not an ideal mounting location, and if this was going to be something I would use more than once every couple years, I'd probably pull up on this wall and reinforce it a little bit. But again, this is not going to be something that's going to be used very frequently, so I'm okay taking that risk. So let's see. Actually, let's strip these wires back a bit further, because this is number 10 wire after all. Let's strip these. Leviton actually did a nice job on this outlet, because they're all screw terminals and they're all accessible directly from the back. So that's kind of nice. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we can't plug this thing in. I think that'll work. Worst case, we can flip it upside down. All right, so let's start doing this. Set my ground. Use caution, because the edges of this outlet are very sharp. I can feel them. Okay, so I'm doing the neutral to the silver screw. Make sure these are good and tight. The last is the black to this other gold screw. Run over everything again, make sure it's good and tight. Man, I can feel this thing digging in my hands. Might be time for a pair of gloves. Now comes the fun part, folding this thing back in here. All right, let's put the faceplate on, and we'll be just about done. Okay, I got the power turned back on. Hopefully you guys can read this meter. So if everything is working correctly, we should have 240 volts. Actually, we turn the breaker on first, right? Between these two legs here. Oops, I don't. Resistance. So 243, that's correct. We should have 120 from each one to the neutral, which is this one down here. That's correct. That's correct. So this is wired correctly now, and we can just make sure our ground is wired up. Let's do just a continuity test on the ground. Ground's good. Okay. This is just about done. Last step is to adjust these knockouts. So if you recall, we have one of those skinny breakers here. So I have to take out another space because it's a full-size breaker, and then another 1, 2, 3, 4. So another, I guess, 1, then 1, 2, 3, 4. So a total of 5. And these just twist out. They're pretty easy. One. That should do it. Now I should also note that you're watching me do this in a fairly new electrical panel. If you have like a fuse box or a Federal Pacific or a Zinsco or Challenger panel, anything really old, or don't even bother, just get a new panel. I mean, these things are safety devices, right? This is what keeps you safe when you're using electricity in your house. Not the type of area where you want to save money by taking a cheaper route, potentially unsafe route. I personally like GE products. I find they're a good value. They're pretty high quality, readily available. I mean, you can get breakers for these at Lowe's, Home Depot. So it's not going to break the bank. All right, folks, that's it. So we now have ourselves a brand new breaker here for our dryer. This is for my welder. This is for my air compressor on the other side of the shop. Anyway, hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please subscribe, stay safe. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.